Hi there. Welcome to listeners from across the globe. My name is Noune, and this is Best Damn Reality, a new podcast intending to help bridge the spiritual and material worlds. Each week, I invite you to join me and to suspend all preconceived notions, to open your minds and your hearts to seeing everything from a much vaster perspective. Should you be enticed enough, please also consider visiting me on my YouTube channel and on my business Facebook page, both under the name Allison Noune. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. Good morning. Sunday, July 4th, 2021, here in Sarasota, Florida. It's 9:29 in the morning. This is intending to be the next episode of my podcast, Best Damn Reality. It's unbelievable because it's been over 2 months since I recorded my last episode, and it's been just over a year since the podcast has been in existence. Definitely the longest gap that I have had in between episodes. And I'm working to sort of jump back in today, but admittedly, there will likely be little flow between the last episode and today's, simply because of the amount of time that has passed. What has also become a tad bit challenging is that for me, in my unique world of work, that is with my company of me, and the various arms of this unique little company, that is not yet exactly clear to many but me. I've got a number of mediums through which I am laying the groundwork for each different medium to sort of be geared towards a specific focus. But as with everything in my world of work, it's all interconnected. It's all interrelated. So even trying to do that is a bit challenging, to isolate one medium to be focused on one topic or one theme, if you will. And right now, in addition to this podcast, what has become a lot more activated and close to becoming live are the following. My Patreon page is actually fully in creation and live and active. If anybody were to search for my name on Patreon, you would see that I have it spelled out, and there are 5 different tier options for people to support me, to begin supporting me there, with the smallest or amount cheapest tier being $4. That is an activated new thing for me, something that I've put time into to try to allow for people to support me specifically, since the other thing that has become a huge piece of the puzzle that's now in formation is my project called Ripple 2020 that I first introduced in episode 1 of this podcast just over a year ago. The website, ripple2020.world, was set to soft launch today. And a little bit of what I'm going to talk about in this podcast episode is going to speak to why that has been delayed. But it will be a live website within the next 1 or 2 weeks. It just won't yet be activated to receive contributions, which of course is the essence of the project. More to talk on that, but right now I'm just trying to lay out the various arms of my work in addition to this podcast, which all is under the umbrella of working to be an example through and through of living the best damn reality that is possible, telling the best human story, going out into the world believing that it is possible to co-create a world from a foundation of abundance as opposed to lack, from a foundation of cooperation versus a foundation of competition, And most importantly, from a foundation of love as opposed to a foundation of fear. That is the overall goal of every single piece of my work. And that has been encapsulated best up to this point with the title of this podcast, which is Best Damn Reality. So we've got the podcast, we've got my Patreon page that I've been working on in the past couple of months. We've got the website, ripple2020.world, which is the first huge, not a small project, $4 million goal to fundraise $4 million. That will be my little company of me. Its very first project that I am putting out into the world officially. So that has been a huge focus of my time in the past 2 months. In addition, of course, to living my day-to-day life, the jobs I have to work to pay my bills, caring for my home and my pets. So it's a lot to juggle. And I am working to get back and find the flow to all of these things. And yes, the podcast will be speaking to a specific arm of everything. The Patreon page will be sharing a very specific theme. The website, ripple2020.world, is entirely about that project. And then I've got my YouTube channel, my primary YouTube channel, my secondary YouTube channel, and a revamping of my personal website that is taking place. So it's a lot to sort of keep track of and to not bombard people, which is almost impossible. It's a guaranteed that it is a lot right now, but there is a purpose that I'm weaving together. And it's just going to take a little bit more time to get them all operational and then to hone in on what each medium is intending to focus upon. So right now, with the podcast, what I would like to talk just a little bit about is, I guess for lack of a better way of explaining it, it's a touch-in of the energies of the world around us, the world around me, outside of my own little individual world, which is admittedly very small. And touching into that world is not exactly the way that I desire. One of the best parts about my event work world when I was traveling the country, putting on triathlons with a company called Ironman and running races with various other companies, was that I was literally touching down in states across our United States and very much getting a wide range of experience of the world around me. Since all of this nonsense hit with the pandemic, obviously we lost the world of events in all of 2020. And even as that world has returned, and I've been invited multiple times to work these events, I am very much holding true to, for multiple reasons, to staying very close to home and to not even returning to local events until the month of September. Again, I'm not going to go into those personal reasons right now, but that means that my tapping into the world outside of my own day-to-day life has been limited to a way that I don't prefer, which is through YouTube and through the internet and through the computer screen. It's extremely indirect, obviously. It's just so limiting, and I'm extremely appreciative of it in certain regards, but it is definitely a limited way to touch into what is quote unquote real, and where the collective consciousness and where the collective energies stand. And in the past 3 days, in particular, I really had to reevaluate a huge chunk of that world and how I was tapping into it and the folks into whom I was tapping into, or, following, if you will. For the better part of the last 18 months, I've been getting my news from what's going on in the world from individuals. They collectively sort of refer to themselves under this title, which I try to refrain from using titles and labels, but we know that we still require those to some degree in order to sort of communicate with one another. They fall under the title of, quote unquote, the truthers or the truth movement or the truth community. Supposedly, these individuals have been reporting on facts and news that has been absolutely censored and hidden from us and kept from us through the mainstream media outlets. I do believe that that statement I just made is factual, that they have been reporting on facts that have been kept from us and censored from the mainstream. However, with this huge caveat, it has come to my attention, and I admit there were some minimal red flags that I just wasn't ready to dive into until the past few days on sort of evaluating to what degree or not people that are claiming to be of sort of these, let's just say they're claiming to be reporting truth that the mainstream is not. And it would appear that there is at least reason to take pause that more than one of these people that I have been following may not be as truthful and honest and good as they proclaim themselves to be. And this is a little tricky for me to even talk about and comment upon because, as I've mentioned many times before, there is a very fine line between calling something out for what it is and judging something and passing judgment on it. Very, very fine line. Made even more challenging and difficult in this regard because I don't have direct experience with any of these folks. Yes, a couple of them here or there I've been able to communicate in a comment or in an email, but very, very few. A number of them I've tried to reach out to directly to establish communication for multiple reasons and haven't heard anything back from. So I don't really enjoy that that my basis for trying to establish to what degree these folks are actually being truthful, I don't really know when it comes down to it. And the reason I'm bringing this all up today, and this part does directly link to my project, and is a direct reason why the soft launch of the project has changed dramatically, both in focus, both in the specifics of what we'll be launching and how it will be launching, and the date it will be launching, has all been drastically affected by what I've undergone as a process of evaluation over the course of the past few days. A huge part of Ripple 2020 is identifying what I'm calling my beneficiaries. The goal, which you probably will not remember, and for anybody for whom this is your very first episode, likely this whole episode will then confuse you, so I encourage you to jump back anywhere into the earlier episodes to get a better idea of who I am and all that I'm talking about. But the goal of Ripple 2020, in short, is to be a very different representation of, pretty much everything, of how we do work, of how we move the resource of money, and really just getting things moving in a pay-it-forward motion, supporting energy of the higher dimensions as opposed to the limited 3D physical-based dimension, and to really be the change that we all claim we want to see. And my little idea, which is not rocket science, one that really I'm just serving as a conduit of with my company of me, is to raise $4 million, hold back money for the expenses that are going to be associated with serving as the conduit, the biggest one being business expenses, very minimal expenses thereafter, but the business expenses and the amount that I have to pay to raise that money, i.e. to PayPal or Venmo or to the various other third companies in order to just collect the dollar that I'm looking to raise from 4 million people. Once the expenses are covered, every single penny that I can possibly keep is then keep back from the government or from paying those middle companies is then going right back out to a predetermined list of beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries, the agreement, each beneficiary will have a unique agreement with me that is established before they're included on the list. And they will be designated a certain amount. And first and foremost, the entire energy of the funding is to pay it forward. So when and if and when they receive this chunk of money, they don't ever pay it back to me. They're paying it forward back into society. So choosing the beneficiaries is an enormous task that I'm taking on and the responsibility, because the ultimate thing that I'm evaluating is the genuity of the heart energy and the genuine, honest intention of serving others and paying it forward. I am not trying to judge businesses that are serving themselves or individuals that are choosing to serve themselves. I'm not intending to judge that at all. What I am intending to do is identify and bring, in this case, the specific resource of money to people and small companies that have been doing the work and that have, in some way to me, demonstrated that they genuinely are coming from the heart as opposed to the mind and genuinely are looking to serve others and not just serve themselves. So this is not a process that I can rush. This is the fourth iteration of this idea going back 8 years. And over those 8 years, I have had multiple lists of beneficiaries in mind. Multiple lists that continues to be edited, tweaked, changed, added on, deleted from. And in the past year and a half, a number of these individuals that fall into the truth community had made the most recent list of folks that I thought I wanted to include in this project, both to serve, in some cases, as beneficiaries, and in other circumstances, to potentially call upon some of these truth people with their enormous followings to try to help spread the word for this project. And something walloped me Thursday night, 2.5 days ago, to finally start to look a little bit more deeply than I had had time to do into some of these folks, especially the bigger named ones. And many of these bigger named ones, or, a handful of them, I had definitely been tuning into regularly since last March and April. So it definitely shook me quite a bit with my own discernment to learn that in some cases, there was at least minimally a reason to take pause on trying to determine whether or not really that they just are what they say that they are, and not just, quote unquote, attempting to grift, to be grifters out there and to take advantage of people that are feeling, across society right now. There is a huge spectrum of people feeling extremely vulnerable, extremely desperate, extremely depressed, extremely angry, chock full of emotion. And there is a vast spectrum of people feeling these things. And there is a tremendous responsibility. If you find yourself in a position where you are influencing others, tremendous responsibility. And as with everything, there's a spectrum where each individual falls on whether or not they have the awareness of that responsibility and or the ability and willingness to act on that responsibility, or whether they want to take advantage and just make a lot of money, which some of these folks are definitely doing. So what I had thought was going to transpire, which is I genuinely thought I was going to be able to relatively quickly begin to tap into this community once my project was closer to the launching stage, which is where I was fast approaching this past week. And as I dove into the community, if you will, the truth community a little bit more, what I realized in short was I needed to take a tremendous pause myself. And again, I am definitely not intending to judge anyone. What I am intending to do, though, is to find truly heart-centered, love-centered, service to other focused individuals that are speaking about and working to co-create a very different version of Earth. And it is one thing to talk the words, and it is quite another to live those words. And I realized that it was going to take a little bit more time than I had really buffered into my plan here this summer to make sure that I was doing all I could to try to ensure the closest that I can to choosing 100% beneficiaries that are going to fall under those descriptions. Because the chances are I'm not going to choose 100%. The chances are that if I choose 100 beneficiaries, likely there's going to be a couple that don't end up doing with the money what they say they're going to do. But my goal and intention is to try to choose 100% people that are going to do what they say they're going to do. And if you remember, a big part, huge part of this project is getting us back to faith, belief, and trust in one another, where our handshakes and our words are sacred. There will be no legal documents that are, there's going to be nothing that I'm not going to chase down these people and ask them to prove to me that they've done what they said they were going to do. This is a project of trust, which is why the ask from people outside is for only $1. Because I will not be risking any more than $1, potentially $1.60, because the expenses, as it turns out, to get that dollar could be as much as 55-60 cents per dollar. So between $1 and $1.60 is all that's coming from any one person's pocket. So I feel comfortable taking that single risk from 4 million people. Because I'm not risking more than anybody's single dollar or $1.60. But it behooves me because it's going to reflect upon me and my discernment and what I hope to do energetically going forward with other projects in terms of my read on energy. So again, I'm not looking, I don't care personally, but in terms of professionally, if you will, and even that delineation is very, very hard for me to make, but we're still in a world of transitioning from the very clear delineation of personal life and work life. In my world, it's almost impossible for me to delineate that, but for argument's sake here, I know personally I will follow through exactly on what I say I'm doing in my role for this project. But professionally, if you will, that skill, if you will, my read of people, my discernment of people's ability to actually live their word is going to be tested, if you will, through this project. And I really intend to have 100% success rate. And again, not that myself or anybody out there will be able to prove that, but part of what I also learned as I dialed it back into this truth community from sort of a more evaluative perspective, what I found was that there are plenty of people dissecting all of these humans that I think for the most part, even the ones that may be not necessarily doing exactly what they say or may not be as much to service to others as they are to service to self, that may be getting sucked into a little bit of the fame and the popularity and the money, I'd still like to believe that most of them are being guided by their hearts. But boy, oh boy, there is no shortage of people out there policing. And that's okay. But what I'm also trying to do is anticipate all of the ways that energy is going to be coming at me and coming at this project. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit today about the truth community, about taking pause, about reminding, what I also had to realize is, boy, I had putting a disproportionate amount of weight and energy and attention outside of myself. Even though I have been working extremely hard on this project, which is it's sort of the next level of an external representation of all the work that I've been doing internally. This is me going out into the world from a much more well-rounded, healed, mature, wiser Allison, and taking and putting together a project out in the world that doesn't come from the wounded child that I was up until my mid to upper 30s. This is a project that comes from a much different version of myself. And as such, I have been very much internally focused. But I had begun to put a lot of weight on things outside of me, more than I quote unquote should have been. In whether it was what these people were specifically talking about, whether it was in these people themselves, whether it was in, any number of things. And so I'm really grateful for the fact that Spirit guided me to kind of going down this little mini rabbit hole and inundating myself with a lot of videos, specifically of some folks out there that are doing some digging on these, especially some of these bigger name folks. And do I have opinions on these folks that are doing the digging? Possibly, but at the same time, I also kind of have an appreciation for what they're doing. It's as with everything, you got to go within to get your own read. It's up to all of us to hone in on our own discernment. And, it's been a journey the past few days, a tad embarrassed at times to feel like, whoa, there's some serious evidence, for this person or this person, it's almost undeniable that they're not what I thought they were. And then it causes me to take tremendous pause because my original belief and take was that they were not these things. And again, I don't mean to be cryptic, but I will not share specific names because, again, that's not my role right here. That's not what I'm intending to do. I'm simply intending, and again, the only people that will probably even remotely understand this episode are people that are already familiar with this truth community. And you probably can all guess if you're listening and you're understand what that community is. And if you've been watching people, you can probably guess and name a lot of these names that I'm thinking of. And the other challenging piece of that is I'm trying to serve as a bridge between sort of where we are as a world and a society and where I think we're transitioning into. And that means that where we are, and a lot of people within my old network, if you will, they're not going to have a freaking clue who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about, because the vast majority of my old network, for lack of a better way of generalizing it, and again, forgive me for the generalization, but it is just that. At a general level, the vast majority of my old network is of the establishment, is of these systems. They're of the hierarchies. They're very highly educated, very successful people across their fields. They have done well in these systems. And so far in the past year and a half, what I've observed is the majority of people for whom that is true, they don't really have the same impetus. They don't have the same experiences that even draws them to be open to considering anything else. Where those of us who have been on a very different journey, for lack of a better way of explaining it, more of a unique journey, unique to our soul's calling and not one that's just following the entrenched, traveled paths of mainstream life. We've been on this. We've known some of these things that are being revealed. Maybe not to the extent that they've been revealed now, but I've been well aware of what this pandemic has revealed since 9/11. I have been well aware of it. Definitely not to the breadth and the depth that I have learned in the past year and a half, but I share this part because I know with this episode at least, I'm likely not reaching any of the people that are, for lack of a better way, more of the systems, more in the regular mainstream world, folks that are doing well and are achieving success in that world. And that it continues to be a pretty challenging dance to dance, a very challenging line to toe, to try to speak to two very different sides of a spectrum, to both ends of a seesaw, if you will. So right now, I just wanted to capture a little bit today. I don't even know that I'm going to use this recording. I'm coming up here on 30 minutes. I hadn't posted an episode in over 2 months. I reached and had a very intense week as it pertains to Ripple 2020 and the launching of that page, my world of work, and all of it related to really tapping in and assessing the world at large and the mass consciousness at large and where it's at. And all this is just me trying to jump back in and get the energy of the podcast rolling again. Likely an episode that many won't listen to, at least not close to when the time is that it's being recorded here on July 4th. But again, I've kind of learned to not judge myself and just to move on, let it be what it's going to be, and trust that this recording is going to take me the next step to whatever to whatever's next for the podcast, to the next step of the project, to the next step of my world of work. And I will say, be on the lookout for ripple2020.world, because what I do anticipate is that the website will go live, and it is not completed. It will go live. It will not be yet activated to receive money, because I do not believe at this point, I will be deciding here within the next week, but it is looking very likely that I will not actively start the fundraising until January 1st of 2022. What is likely going to happen is I'm going to share the story of the project and share even the building of the remainder of the website from now until January 1st, 2022, building the beneficiary list and doing all I can to make the project as clear as I can be, even though I've said before, it is not a project that can be described with words. It is one that will be witnessed. You'll witness it at the conclusion of it, and that only happens by taking the leap of faith to contribute $1 and to be a part of it. So, as disparate as this recording may have been, as confusing as it may have been, as boring as it may have been, if you stuck with me to the end, I thank you. Happy 4th of July to anybody in the United States of America, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.